just want to welcome everybody to the Pollinate Network's webinar we're hosting today called Exploring the Power of Mentoring, Building Resilience in Challenging Times. So for those of you who may not know me, my name is Amy Strachan. I'm your background host today. So our goal today is or actually Christy and Cheryl's goal today was to just try to keep this not only informative, but light and conversational. So the bulk of the rest of our time here is going to be very conversational. And of course, feel free if you have any thoughts or questions, throw them in the comments or jot them off to the side. We're going to save a little bit of time at the end for some discussion and questions if you have them. And then, so for those of you who may be new to us or may not be familiar with Pollinate Networks, we're a company that's based in Guelph, Ontario, in Canada. We're mentoring experts, and we specialize in providing mentoring and collaboration programs, not only for both small organizations, large and more global organizations as well. So we've worked with groups all over the world, small, local, everywhere. And it's no surprise that mentoring is such a beneficial thing to have as one of your tools that you use, because it has so many benefits. It accelerates knowledge, it builds competencies, it can amplify diversity and inclusion in an organization, just to name a few. We could go on and on. So our programs at Pollinate, I think our biggest claim to fame is that we have some really great matching software that we call our cross-pollinate AI matching algorithm. And over the years, we have proved ourselves with our program design. We use a diverse range of experts, best practices, reporting and tracking to achieve any of your objectives that you may have for a mentoring program that you might want to insert. So let's get going here. So for today's webinar, part of a little bit of mentoring education we have here. So we know that entrepreneurs and startups and business owners in today's climate are experiencing a greater struggle than ever to manage all the challenges based upon them in today's environment and economy. So not only is this true for every entrepreneur, every startup, but from our experience and from a lot of people we've been talking with over the last little while, we know that those affected in the agriculture and the agri-food sector have quite a bit more on their plates. And so that's why we've welcomed Cheryl here today as our guest to talk about her experience and what she's experienced in the last little while. So my first introduction today, I want to introduce Christy Pettit. So Christy Pettit is our CEO and co-founder of Pollinate Networks. So Christy has over 25 years of experience helping organizations transform.
I started as a child. I just want to
started as a child, yes. Yeah, so welcome, Christy. And finally, before I quit talking and let these experts take over from me, I really want to welcome, thank you so much for joining us today, Cheryl. Cheryl is a highly rated speaker. If you don't know her already, she's a highly rated speaker and trainer, as well as an experiential tourism coach, entrepreneur, and philanthropist. So Cheryl is CEO of 2 award-winning businesses. So Udderly Ridiculous, a goat milk ice cream company, and Udderly Ridiculous Farm Life, which is an agri-tourism business based right on their family farm in Bright, Ontario, Canada. So Cheryl and her team have won numerous awards, both at the regional, local level, as well as provincial level. And as well, a long list of prestigious culinary and tourism awards they've also won too. So maybe Cheryl will even talk about those a little later. Anyways, welcome. Tossing it over to you, Christy. Take it away.
Thank you, Amy. And for those of you like Alan Grabinski who know us well, and Amy says she's not in sales, Alan, don't you think that was pretty good? I think, Amy, you always keep us proud. setting up the conversation for sure. And I am thrilled to be here
There you
with
go.
Cheryl. Exactly, here with Cheryl. Cheryl and I actually cooked up this idea, believe it or not, at a 7 a.m. before Cheryl went up to do the chores conversation we were having, just about life and business and how, and we were actually co-mentoring, I think, Cheryl, we could safely say at the time, and really thinking through as women entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs in an interesting time in history, you know, how could we support each other and what could we be doing and what were some of the strategies that we were using for resilience. And when Amy says it'll be light and conversational, that means that based on Cheryl and I's style, nailing us down to a script is nigh impossible. So we gave up on that idea and we thought we would just have conversation. And as Amy said, obviously type a question into the chat or just raise your hand or talk. We're happy to go where the conversation leads us and where it may lead you to ask some questions. And I am thrilled to have Cheryl here. Cheryl is an extremely accomplished entrepreneur. She has 9 agri-tourism awards for everything under the sun, from innovation to events to products to different things. And we've actually had the chance to do some really interesting change work together over time, helping organizations change and learn and grow. And that has also been really edifying. And I am completely addicted to the Udderly Ridiculous chocolate and red wine ice cream. And I highly recommend that to anybody. It'll cure a lot of your woes and help a lot with your resilience, I think, right out of the gate there. But why don't we jump in, Cheryl, with give us a little bit of your current situation. Tell us a little bit more about your businesses and how you came to be doing what you're doing.
Yeah, it's Christy and I have known each other for a lot of years. And often when people just get to know me, they're asking about, you know, my background and how long I've been farming for and all kinds of things. I did not grow up in farming. Okay, I was an import. I was allergic to everything farm. I just happened to fall in love with a blue-eyed, blonde-haired cutie with a bunch of dimples. And, you know, hence my life began on the farm. But my background is in corporate facilitation, training and development, instructional design. And that's where Christy and I met, working with organizations to help build their, you know, leadership capacity and, you know, to help leaders to know how to work with their team and engage them and be emotionally intelligent, heaven forbid. And so I was having a great life doing that, but then met this, you know, cute guy and he farmed. And so I moved to the farm and he was in goat dairy at the time. We just, you know, closed that off. That's a whole other story for another day. But you know, I had to really get this deep dive into what agriculture and rural life was all about and understand what that meant from not only a business perspective, but a life perspective, because it really is part of who you are. It's almost like a calling, not just, you know, a job that people have. And so it was a bit of a culture shock for me, honestly. And then in, you know, 2017, there is a bit of a challenge in the goat milk industry. It's not a protected industry like cow dairy or, you know, quota systems like chicken and so on. And one of the great big companies stopped taking about 1 million liters of Ontario goat milk, and it kind of crashed the system. And we watched not only us, but farmers all around feel the impacts of that. And so we started having these conversations about what the future could look like, not only for our farm, but for other Ontario goat farmers. And we noticed that there was not a lot of innovation when it came to products. And so as we started talking about that, you know, ice cream was not something that was readily available on the market. So many people have challenges digesting cow milk. And we thought, you know what, ice cream goes with every like happy memory, sad memory. You know, you're going through a breakup, you got a pint of ice cream. You're going through a kid's birthday party, you have ice cream. I mean, it's just part of life. And why shouldn't everyone get to enjoy that? And so I started down the path. I'm not a food scientist. You know, I've never been in food development. Learning all of those systems was a little insane and crazy, as we may get into. And we launched into that. And so I was still doing corporate training on the side while building this agri-food business, and started to learn about the fact that, you know, there's a lot of rules and regulations around dairy. And my goal of a cute little food truck while I made ice cream became hey, you have to launch to the market wholesale, like just, go big or go home. And since I am a very tiny body with a huge personality, I like a good challenge. So I went big. And that led to all kinds of fun and interesting things, including, winning the Grand Prix of New Products in Canada, which was super exciting. And we were on a great track, and things were exciting, and I was getting on shelves, and that was quite an adventure. And then I don't know if you're all around for 2020, in that little blip in people's lives, but that certainly affected the work
Yeah.
that we did. We couldn't educate, we couldn't sample, we couldn't do a lot of things, and people kept asking me, can we come to the farm? Can we cuddle with goats? Can we do goat yoga? I'm like, who wants to do goat yoga? Who wants their Lululemon pants chewed and pooped on by a goat? But people do. And
Turns out
so,
people do.
apparently people do. And so I started actually, processing that. And as an instructional designer, knowing, experiential learning, I also had a really some challenging people commenting about farm practices that were completely and grossly inaccurate and shocking. And so, for us, it was kind of like, how can we create these moments? How can we keep the brand alive while we go through this pandemic? We didn't know how long it would last. And how do we start to open up agriculture conversation, real conversation about what really happens, and help people get back to, practices in agriculture and food systems? And how do we, create a conduit for those conversations? And so we opened the agri-tourism facility in July of 2021, and things have been, going crazy ever since. So all of that has been my last number of
That's
years,
really
which I
good.
never expected in a lifetime.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think, one of the things that Cheryl just said is definitely something that I want to note as a resilience building tactic, which is hard to do when things are stressful and you've lost perspective. But Cheryl, you did such a great job of taking stock of okay, so plan A, maybe not happening, stuff out of our control, but taking stock, what do we have here? And whether that's as an entrepreneur and the assets you've built in your business, or as someone inside an organization and thinking about what are the assets you've built along the way in your career, relationships and knowledge bases and so on. But I admire you so much for that, and you've pivoted. And when I think about your story, and knowing a little bit more than some of the folks here on the webinar, so your key commodity you were creating kind of crashed. You've had some interesting partnership stuff, as we all have. Anybody who's been in business for any length of time, there's always some interesting partnership things to work through. You've had the specter of having to sort of reorganize things and so on. Tell us a little bit about your strategies for staying resilient, because sometimes, when we've had our early morning 7 a.m. calls, there's been a lot of stress on your shoulders, between managing through this crisis with goat milk, to how do we get things started, to, what are we going to do about managing the debt load, to, the staffing. You've had lots of people coming and going staffing wise, which again, I think is a prevalent problem that all of us as leaders are facing, is that the employment market has also changed, as well as the 2020 blip, as well as the goat milk. So you've had a real constellation of things coming your way that lead to, I think we started this conversation, Cheryl, with, this is leading me to build lots of resilience. I'm not sure I need this much practice, but tell us a few more things that you have in your toolkit that you would do, that you have been doing, to keep yourself sane and moving forward, because you're very much doing that despite all of the challenges that have come your way.
Yeah, and from those challenges, there's lots of things, as you talked about. There are some things inside our control, and there are some things completely outside of control. For example, we're going through a whole nother iteration with the farm, and partnership was one of those, a breakdown of a partnership. But when you look at COVID and the war, the implications of those things on the average individual we're feeling those. We're feeling the costs of things going up, right? Food costs going up. But on the farm, you know, from one year to the next, for example, our feed bill went up $150,000. That's just
Wow.
one thing that went up, you know, and you know, and all the costs with producing food and packaging and all of those kinds of things, rules, regulations. You know, there's so many things that you have coming at you, and there's only so many of those you can actually just sort of prepare yourself for. You can prepare yourself for, you know, the worst case scenario, and we do that. I think that's an important part of business to say, you know, what are we
What's the worst
optimistically
thing that
looking
can
at?
happen, and how would we survive?
That's right.
It is surprisingly important to do that sometimes when the chips are really down.
Yeah,
You know, and it's interesting. I've had some therapists say the same thing. It's actually important for you to not have unnamed things that you're afraid of whilst you're going through the stress. Better to name
absolutely.
them and figure, you know, put them on a list, know that you know them.
And that's, I mean, when we, you know, look at kind of stress loads and we look at emotional intelligence and, you know, when we can name that thing that we're concerned about, it drops our allostatic load by 50%. And so our ability to actually manage through challenging times, you know, is really dependent on how we're looking at them some ways. And so being able to say, hey, this is the worst case. And sometimes the worst case happens and then some, right? And so if we've already sort of gone towards the worst case scenario, then we've got some things, some tools that we can pull from to reset. And a lot of people are scared about looking at the negative. They want to just look at the positive. And that's just not the reality for most entrepreneurs. Change is something that's going to happen to every single one of us. And if we're not prepared for those things, then it's challenging. Now, on the optimism side, there are always going to be people that tear you down. And so there are individuals that you want to invite into your life for small periods. And those are sometimes family. And sometimes you have to, you know, set them aside for certain elements in your life as you're trying to pivot. So for example, for us, you know, going from the ice cream and then pivoting to the farm, we had, you know, we had certain people in our life that thought not just that I was insane, but that I was reckless. That what are you doing? Like, this is crazy. They couldn't see the vision. They couldn't see the strategy. They couldn't see the long game. And so you can play the short game or you can play the long game. And as long as you feel confident and comfortable, then making sure that you've got, and this is where, you know, mentoring, there's different kinds of mentors you pull into your life. Some are very much about, you know, skills and development and getting you to the next stage. Others are really there to surround you with kinds of information you need to prop you up in those times when you're questioning yourself. And so I really surround myself with a number of individuals across the spectrum of my business that I can contact and pull on at those times. And some are for a moment, and some have been sort of like lifetime contacts that we've worked with. And that's in our farm business, that's in my ice cream business, that's in the tourism business. And that helps with your resilience, having someone that can carry your ball a little bit, or at least come around you and support that system. That's been a really important thing. You know, I'm not a young person anymore. And I've had
It's
to
all
learn.
relative. It's all
I
relative.
know.
Depends who we're comparing
I,
ourselves to, right?
I've had to learn how to manage my energy. And I used to be able to get to the end of the day and it's, you know, 8 or 9 o'clock and I'm tired, but I would push through that and I would get 10 more things done. I now know that that's just not a healthy thing to do, as we all learn. And so I've learned not to push through exhaustion. When my body and my mind is saying stop, I stop. And I might, you know, put on some music or cuddle with my micro cow or, you know, pray or binge watch a Netflix show or eat a bag of chips and not really care. Um, those are things that you have to sort of step back and say, I need to just be with myself right now. I need to shut these things off because I'm not actually being effective as a leader. That's been really important. And there's two really specific things that I do constantly that I think is helpful for others. Number one is I constantly need to remind myself that this too shall pass. I've been through harder things and I've gotten to the other side of those, and I have the skills and tools needed to do that. And so, I remind myself of those things, and I'm the sort of master of compartmentalization. I put things in a box and I mentally put them on a shelf so that I can focus on the most critical thing in front of me. Now, that's a good skill as long as you pick up that other box eventually and deal with it. And the last thing I end up doing, which becomes really critical when there's a lot of stress and there's a lot of negativity and there's a lot of things going wrong, is I find one victory for the day. And that could be the most insignificant thing, but I always have to look at what's my one victory for today. And it kind of grounds me that there's still good, there's still momentum, there's still movement, right? As human beings, and Christy, you know this, we are wired to make progress, and we're wired for connection. And for me, progress is a really important thing to see, or else I get just like completely overwhelmed. I need to see some element of progress. So I'm going to pause. I know that's a lot of stuff coming at sort of you and everyone. And
It's great stuff, though. I love what you've said so far. The taking stock, the not being afraid. We can't stay in the bad stuff, but not being afraid to say, we got to unpack this and see how bad it could get and get a realistic sense. I loved how you said, and I'd love to talk more about, the role of mentors and other people in your life. For me, I know as an entrepreneur, it really makes the difference in terms of how I'm able to keep perspective.
mm-hmm.
We have to continually step back and be objective because, to get the bigger picture, as you say. I absolutely love your one victory for the day and what matters most right now. I think that's something also that I subscribe to from a resilience perspective, is thinking about there's a million things you could do. There are literally many, many, many things you could do, but what matters most now to you,
Mm-hmm.
to the business, for sure. And those moments of, what, I need a break, being able to moderate ourselves. Sometimes it feels like when the chips are down, that the thing is to just work really hard. And sometimes that is the answer. And sometimes, as you say, it's more like we need to unplug for a minute to be productive. But talk to us a little bit about I've had the privilege not only of working with you and knowing you a long time, but we've overlapped in some women entrepreneurship mentorship experiences too. But talk to us a little bit about how that, the mentorship piece has helped you retain your resilience, grow your resilience through some of these challenging times that have erupted over the last while.
I think that mentorship people are starting to understand, I think, the value of it. But it's still one of these areas where, especially as women entrepreneurs, there's this kind of reluctance to admit that we can't be everything for everyone.
I'll figure it out. I don't
Yeah,
want to
like
bother anybody.
We all have the gremlin inside that says, I'm really not that smart, and I'm really not that smart. And that is perfectly okay. And this is the opportunity, especially, I think about your mentoring system and being able to match to the right people, whether that's inside an organization or going out and finding those individuals to say, what are those areas where I want to grow in my business as a human being? And, who are the people that I trust to give me the real information? Because that's an important thing. And I think every individual, especially entrepreneurs, need to have those people in their life that can not only help their business move forward and introduce them, right? I have a lot of mentors that are ahead of me 5 steps. And so they can introduce me to the right people. They're challenging me with the right questions. They're saying, like, have you thought about these things? And they're helping me to sort of have confidence in the direction I'm going when I don't have confidence in myself. And that can be a really, critical thing for us to have in our corner. It's not an entrepreneur feels like this solo thing, but nobody gets to be successful by themselves. And so mentorship has enabled for me and my business to be able to access those areas with a group of people where we all feel like we're feeding in. And so I do a lot of coaching and mentoring as well. And I have people coaching and mentoring me. And some are like ridiculous. Like I think about you, Christy, it's like, you know, ridiculously intelligent. And we're sitting in conversations together, you know, working through stuff together and feeling like, you know, we're adding value to each other's lives, even for a 5-minute conversation. And those are important to have, but it's also important to have people that know your lane, know the lane you're in, and can help you get to the next stage. And so for me, if I didn't have those people, it would feel not only lonely, I become like isolated, and I'm second guessing. So you start to do this sort of cycle of triggering yourself and believing your own internal demons that say, I'm not good enough. I'm not a food scientist. I'm not a this, I'm not a that, I'm not a that. And you get stuck in that thinking.
Yeah. Well, and I love some of the conversation going on in the chat. So Alan, thank you for throwing your thoughts down. We definitely need to know how to make lemonade. And also, I think what's being reflected, and thanks Julie for embellishing as well, you know, there is a lot of need in business, in leadership, in sort of sales, in a lot of the careers that we have now to keep building emotional resilience.
Yeah.
I was at a breakfast this morning on sales, and they talked about, you know, you're going to hear a lot of no's, and it's the same for us, even in career and business. And again, with this labor market mesh, it's so different than it used to be. It's like, you know, people are shopping at the mall now. What do you got in here? Oh, maybe go over here. So it's not the same as it used to be, where, you know, things seem to be on a pattern. So this whole idea of emotional resilience and building that, and I love how you're saying, Cheryl, you know, one of the ways we do that is by building relationship with a variety of other people to play a variety of roles in our lives. And, you know, it's reciprocal. I think it often goes both ways, but people who can keep bringing that perspective back. And yeah, I think, you know, yeah, go ahead.
And I was just going to say, and inviting that. So one of the things we have to be open to is inviting criticism, but you want to invite criticism from the right people. And I think Julie mentioned this, right? Who are the people that you have in your ring, right? Who are doing this work or who have experience? Like, don't just let anyone give you feedback or criticism. Let the right people do that, because that will move you forward versus paralyze you. And I think about, I know we're not this is a path I don't want to open up entirely, but the next generation hasn't built the skill of resilience. They haven't had to fail. They haven't had to face tough things. We've insulated them from that, and we're seeing the impacts of that. And so as individuals who are understanding the value of mentoring, how do we also be good examples to that next generation to say, you know, you're not going to die if you go through something hard. In fact, you're going to grow. It's very much like building muscles, right? When you exercise, if you start today, you know, you're 10 minutes in and you're exhausted, but in a month from now, you can run a half marathon. I mean, not exactly
more than a month for me, but
okay, more than a month for me too. But you know what I'm saying, right? We have to build those things, and that takes pushing through the stuff that's hard, not stepping back from it. And I think as business owners, it's also on us to show that example to the next generation, whether that's our staff or our kids or people coming around, that this is okay.
We can do hard things, and
we can.
Sometimes stuff doesn't go perfectly. Yes, Tracy, the hard stuff helps us grow even more. Great question from Mary Thornley. Yeah. Where did you find your mentors, Cheryl? I know that there have been some offered up through the Pollinate system to you, but you also have, well, why don't you explain some of the different relationships you've been able to find and how you found them?
Yeah, so Pollinate has definitely been one. And I was part of a program called Innovation Guelph, which is now called Boundless Accelerator, I believe is the right term. And so through that, Pollinate has been a really instrumental partner in that. There's a women's entrepreneur program through that called Rise, or has been. And so that has also been one way where when you look at certain entrepreneur programs that are available, innovation programs, oftentimes those are actually supporting you with mentors around that. So looking at where there's funding and support and finding out whether they have mentors on board. I've had a number of mentors through those programs and some that weren't a good fit, and we made a change. And that's perfectly acceptable. Sometimes it's a good fit for a small time. Sometimes it's just not a good fit at all. That's also where I've done a lot of mentoring is through that program. And then I'm also, as I look at the different businesses, I'm looking at who's actually going to help me grow. And sometimes that is, government individuals that basically have been through it and are there to sort of create that support system. Other times it's individual business owners. So I had one business owner that was doing similar things that I wanted to do. I simply reached out to them, made some connections, asked the question, and they've been instrumental in being that sort of startup mentor to say, here are the things we ran into that we wish we had have known ahead of time. I love to ask the question, what am I not smart enough to ask that I should be asking? And people always laugh at that, but it changes the conversation. And it says, you know what, I don't know everything. And I know that you know a lot more than me. And so it puts you in a position of being open to hear what someone has to say. And I found that lots of really great conversations have opened up because of that.
No. So I think, Cheryl, to your points, there are programs that have some funding and have some mentors attached. Associations, so I know, Mary, that's part of what you do, but there are associations that offer mentorship. And then I think to Cheryl's point, sometimes you don't want to necessarily make it super formal, but if you can find someone who will talk to you, who's just a little further down the path than what you are, that can help. And I think one of the things you said, Cheryl, that really, again, ties back into finding the people that can help us be resilient is the idea that we need to be fairly purpose driven, meaning sometimes when I call you at 7 a.m, it's because I'm wondering how you are. Sometimes it's because I've got a big burden on my heart and I want to put it out there to someone who I trust. Sometimes I actually need information. Sometimes I do need to know what my blind sides are. Sometimes I just need to be inspired, or I need collegiality. So having that in your mind of what am I looking for? What is it that I need now? Can be helpful in my mind too. I want to ask Cheryl if you want to summarize anything, and then let's get any other questions out of the group. We've committed to not being on here too long, but it's really impactful to hear your side of things. And so if you want to give any summary and everybody can jump in with any last questions, that would be good.
Yeah, I would say one thing that's been really good for me, and this, if you think if you're in a partnership with someone, or you've got someone at your workplace that you're really connected to, for me, it's my husband right now, because we tend to be working the most together. But we have a pact, and that pact says only one of us can be having a breakdown at any given time.
It's your day.
Right. And so that's an important pact, A. But B, what it also does is I can say, you know what? I am not sane in this moment. I am not okay. I give myself permission to say, I don't think I can do this. And I give myself a little time to have a mini breakdown. And then I get on with it. But sometimes if you just try to tell yourself, I'm fine, then the you're not fine actually comes out in your pores. And so sometimes it's okay to be not fine. That actually I found has been really helpful for both of us. And then we go, okay, we can do this, and we get on with it. Yeah. So give yourself permission to be not fine.
I love that. And I think part of resilience is knowing that, we are finite beings, right? We are rechargeable, but we are finite beings. And as you said earlier, sometimes you can push through it and sometimes you can't. And sometimes you need to give yourself permission to have that mini breakdown. I know that the therapists that we work with and talk to say, once you have truly burned out, it's hard to come back. So we're, those of us in leadership, I see so many of us here, even those, you folks who aren't immediately entrepreneuring right now, you know, there is that careful balance of the work wants a lot from us. The work wants a
Mhm.
lot from us. So how do we continue to pour back in and take the moments that we need to take? It is a delicate dance for sure, for sure.
Yeah.
Some other great comments here. Thank you, Robin. Yes, resilience is key, and I think that the feeling stuck piece, perhaps for me, that's one of the most important moments that I find to call a colleague or a mentor, um, just to get things moving again, for sure, for sure.
And if
All
there's
right.
any questions that anyone has, I know we've been sort of all over the place in this conversation, and there may be specific things. Feel free.
I'm loving the comments. Everybody's putting in such thoughtful comments. Is that, yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. So important. And again, the value of connection. Um,
absolutely.
Amy very cagily has asked, because we told her to remind us, for you to mention the speaking engagements that you have coming up, Cheryl, because there's lots more opportunities to see Cheryl. Now she's about to do a world tour too, to do some researching on the Nuffield scholarship. But tell us what you have coming up, Cheryl, so people can continue to hook into all of your wisdom.
Yeah, so the next thing publicly I have coming up is for International Women's Day for Community Futures Oxford, and that's at the Elmhurst Inn in Ingersoll. I think there's links to that in my social media probably. And that's an open sort of breakfast event. It's also giving back to charity, which is amazing. So if anybody's up in that area, come out for breakfast. I'm going to go a little deeper into the sort of marketing and execution side of the business at that, which is going to be fun. And then, yeah, I'm really honored, and I think I see one of my colleagues in Nuffield. I'm one of 6 Canadians that have been chosen to be what's called a Nuffield Scholar. It's an agricultural scholarship to really research a project that will help move agriculture forward. And my particular project's on agri-tourism. So I have an international sort of travel that needs to take place over the next couple of years. And I start that coming up very shortly in Brazil and Costa Rica. And then, I'll be stopping over at a number of countries, bringing best practices, rules, regulations, all kinds of things back to do a research project and culminate in a 10,000 word report that will be made public domain, that can help really look at what this part of agriculture, food, tourism could be for Canada and how to do it well.
Yeah,
So
how
I'm
do we
super
reconnect
excited about
people
that.
to the farm? How do we
Mm-hmm.
reconnect people to it? And of course, you know, you had lots of spare time, so you added this on.
Yeah.
But no, it's wonderful, and we're glad to have you representing us. So again, please stay on, ask questions if you wish, but just as we want to respect time, the 2 things that I would really love for myself to really take away are, you know, the one victory for the day and what matters most right now. I think those
Mm-hmm.
are things that I sometimes forget to do in my checklist to Palooza each day. So that's really, really helpful for sure. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
and we do have one other question. Can you elaborate more on only the right people can criticize?
Yeah.
And how do you know when you got the right mentor?
Yeah, so only the right people. So what I mean by that is sometimes you'll have family or friends, like we want to go to family and friends for them to say you're awesome, but also sometimes those family and friends are the ones that will also sort of rip you apart and bring you down, but they don't know the business you're in. They haven't done the research you've done. They don't understand all the processes and procedures. And so when I look for the right people, I'm looking for people that I know will give me the honest truth. I know they have skill or experience in the thing that I'm asking them about. So, for example, if I'm asking them, about my wardrobe, I'm not going to go to somebody who's in track pants every day. I'm going to find somebody who has some kind of fashion sense, and I'm going to ask them because I'm going to know they're going to tell me the truth. It's the same in business. Look for who is doing what you want to be doing and then see whether they might be open to being a mentor. And sometimes mentorship is free. Sometimes you need to pay someone a little bit for like coaching, for example, because they're giving up their time to give you their insights. But there's lots of opportunities in lots of different ways to do that. So when you get into a program like through Boundless Accelerator that works with someone like Christy, they'll often put you through a mentorship profile and match you appropriately with your experience, your skills, your goals, the way you learn, and those other individuals that can actually lead and lend something to your life. So that can be really helpful. Having a platform like that to help you do that is really important. When you know that you have the right mentor is when you can have a real honest conversation and then sit back and go, that really made me think. And when I can sit back and say, wow, that really made me think, and I'm now going to go and do something about that, or I'm going to research something about that, or I now have a new connection, that's when I know I've got the right mentor. If you're constantly feeling defensive or put down or, overwhelmed, it's probably not the right person for you. And it's okay to just cut that off and say, you know what, I just don't think it's a good fit for where I'm at right now. And I want to thank you for your time. But I just don't think we're at the same place. And that's okay. Cut it off early. You don't need to waste energy where you have very little to give.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for that question. And yeah, it is, you may have lots of different people over time who speak into your business and your situation. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, we are at 11:43. So again, Cheryl and I will hang out for another minute or two. Thank you all for coming. It was such a great interaction with you all. And Cheryl, thank you for this fast and furious tour, but we got lots of really juicy points on managing resilience from someone who's doing it every day in a very admirable way. So we appreciate you, Cheryl, and your mentorship of all of us.
Thank you so much for inviting me, and thanks to those of you that joined the conversation. Love to see some old friendly faces, not old, you know what I mean. Long standing,
long term,
exactly.
And some new faces.
Lots of great leaders on this call, and so great to have your input and experiences as well.
Absolutely. Feel free to connect with me if you've got other specific questions you couldn't ask here. I think Amy put my LinkedIn contact in the chat, so feel free to connect with me.
Yeah.
And thanks everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you for your interest. Thanks for coming. And I will be following up with maybe just some highlights from today, as well as the recording for everyone who's registered. So appreciate the interest. Have a good rest of your day.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.
You too.
Thanks,
Bye for now.
Bye.
Bye.